Hi, I'm Whitney.
And I'm Camden. Welcome to Ghosts and Garnets, Murder in Idaho.
Guys, what a week this has been. And I have been actively avoiding thinking about this case we're going to tell you about. So in order to continue to not tell you this story for another few minutes, I'm going to tell you about this week. Something just fell.
Ruh-roh.
I don't know what it was. It's a ghost. It's a ghosty. So, guys, Cam and I got asked about a month ago by another podcast if they could interview us on their podcast. And we're like, sure, because we're professionals. And totally profesh. We had to be together physically because of the software that they use. And so we, on Sunday, we each drove 2 hours, met halfway, and very conveniently, Camden's parents live halfway between where we do. So I got to see her parents, which is a delight as always. So we were going to record this episode on Sunday while we were together, and it proved to be much too difficult for us for a myriad of reasons, mostly technical. So instead of recording this episode, we ate an exorbitant amount of cheese that her mother provided us.
Let's talk about warm brie and toast points. It was so delicious. Benita always pulls through.
She spoiled us. We asked for a snack, and boy, did we get one. It was delish. It was so good that I even came home and told Russ about how good it was. The snack that your mother made us.
It was good.
Yeah, and so then we did this 20-minute phone interview with this other podcast. It's called Speaking of Spirits. We don't know when it's going to come out, but we'll certainly let you know.
They were so nice.
So nice.
It was so cool being asked to be on somebody else's podcast when you're so new, and it gives us a little bit of experience. And it's just so nice being in a place where podcasters are supporting other podcasters.
Totally true. And they're also an Idaho podcast. We'll get in all of the information for you guys when we know when the episode's going to come out. If you want to listen to us,
babble,
chit chat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you know, I have two things to tell you about today. One is I'm a grandmother. Well, to a snail. So Jacob got me these geometric glass terrariums for Christmas.
Camden Shaw Gilto Shacker.
What?
You have children old enough to have children.
I know, so did that scare you?
You cannot do that to me.
No, it's
I thought, Jesus, Ashton's done it now.
So, no, I was putting this terrarium together, and I had bought some moss, and then we had some dirt. And anyways, I'm putting these terrariums together, and I'm like, hey, that's a snail shell. That is an alive snail. Now it is my captive. Now he's my grandson. I asked Jacob what we're naming him. He is Daryl. And one of the terrariums has a glass door, so of course I put him in there so he could not escape me.
Is he slimy?
Well, I mean, not his shell.
So he's not a slug.
No, he has a shell, and his cute little head comes out.
He's a slug with the house on him.
Yeah, and he has the really long antennas, and he comes out and he's like, doo-doo-doo-doo.
Okay, I'm not mad at that.
All right, so grandmother Camden to Daryl.
I feel like he would be your son more than he would be your grandson.
I don't know. I'm getting up there. We don't know. It could be either, really.
All right. Well, besides that heart attack that you just gave me, what is your second thing you have to do?
Oh, so the other thing is, and this... Oh, wait, I have another thing. Okay, so the first thing I was going to tell you is that I was getting my nails done today by my sweet girl, Grace. And she was talking about our Moscow Murders Affidavit episode. And she gave us the biggest compliment in the whole wide world. She said it was the best one that she had heard on it, that we gave direct information with a little bit of our opinion, but we weren't trying to be internet sleuths. And she said she sent it to everyone she knows and said, this is the best recap of the situation that I've heard. So that was the sweetest thing in the world.
Thank you, Grace.
Grace, you cutie patootie. She'll be so mad at me. Third thing.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Have you
brag.
forgotten?
No, I remember. I don't want to brag or anything, Whitney, but I had somebody slide into my DMs.
Yes! Your public outcry
I
for
first
personal
got,
DMs.
I got my first, yeah, well, I mean, I had to beg for them, but I got one.
Well, that's all right.
It's my sweet friend, Nicole. Thanks, Nicole.
Oh.
She loves us. She said that she thinks the fuck makes it even better, so.
Well, I'm
Solid.
glad to hear it. Thank you, Nicole. I have 2 things to tell you guys, too. Guys, we're just going to brag and not talk about this fucking monster that we're going to talk about today.
We don't want to.
We don't want to. So I have 2 things. My son told me that in one of their classes, they had to do like a local news story or a news story. They had to research something. And his friend researched the Idaho murders in Moscow. And his friend started telling the class that how he researched it was he listened to this podcast that his parents told him to listen to about the Idaho murders, and it was ours.
Stop!
Yes. Tucker was like, that's my mom's podcast.
Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. Love it.
I know. And my friend Amanda, she texted me today, and she was listening to the Wanda episode. It just came out today. You guys, we record like a week in advance. And she said she was in Costco and that she was laughing like a lunatic about the Balloweener in the middle of Costco, like laughing out loud. So we really nailed that.
Nailed it.
Yeah, and even my mom emailed me. Mind you, she lives a half a mile away from me, and she has a telephone, but she emails me after she listens every week.
Dude, so she emails you instead of like not even texts you. I love it, Nancy. Love you.
And she said that you just make her laugh so much with your jokes, and it was so funny in that Balloweener. And I was like, did my mother just laugh at a penis reference? Did Nancy just laugh at a penis reference? She loved it.
Well, it's funny.
You're bringing the world together one penis joke at a time, Camden.
What is that song? What is that song that everybody... We are the world.
Oh, yeah. 1980s.
We are the
Farm Aid.
children. All right. Okay. Enough.
God.
We got to get into this.
I'm just jabbering 8 minutes in because guys, this one is so bad. And we have thus far avoided doing a case about a child. And I'm going to give you all kinds of trigger warnings here. This is child abuse, sexual assault, murder, all kinds of horrible stuff. And, you know, it's one of those things where you're like, do we need to tell this story? Why are we telling this story? And I think it's so important to tell these stories that make us uncomfortable and that kind of hurt our hearts, because these people, this little girl in this story, she deserves to have her story told, and not just the story of how her life ended, but her story, and to be remembered. And, you know, if this is not your thing, if you can't handle hearing about, you know, the murder of a child, we totally understand. Like, skip this week. We'll see you next week. This is not something we're going to do often, but it is an important story, and it's a story that happened here. So we are going to tell you this awful story now. Ugh. All right. So the story we have for you today is that of a vile, sadistic, and violent sexual predator who, because of repeated fuck-ups by several different parole boards in multiple states, managed to terrorize women and children for decades.
When I was going through this, I just couldn't believe how it just went on and on and on and on.
I am going to get so ragey during this episode. This entirety of this man's life is an example of people just, I don't even, irresponsible. There is not a word strong enough for the choices that people in power made about this man. He shows everyone who he is for decades.
Yes.
And they do not listen to him.
And it is the prime example of why rape convictions should be harder and longer and more.
Yeah. So we're going back to Pocatello. Get it out of your system, Cam.
We're going back to Pocatello.
So your last laugh.
I love it. Get it out of your system. You knew I couldn't help Pocatello.
I knew it. Just see it in your face.
I'm done.
All right. So the evil in this story lives right out in the open. It's not in a book or a movie or hiding in the dark. He lives in your state, in your city, in your neighborhood, on your child's paper route. Let's see. In Greenlee, Weld County, Colorado, on January 9th, 1982, Jeralee Underwood was born to parents Jeffrey and Joyce Browning Underwood. She was sister to Jamin, Justin, Jennifer, Janice, and Jessica. Jeff and Joyce, good Lord, that's a lot of J's, say that Jeralee was kind, loving, smart, and a friend to everyone she met. Jeff said she was a lot of fun. She was always fairly outgoing. She always liked to include everybody on things. And they were all very active in their local LDS church while they were growing up. LDS is Mormon, for those of you not from the area. They also said Jeralee was a hard worker. She was only 11 years old when she started her first job delivering Idaho State Journal newspapers with her older brother. She got tips quite often, her mom remembers. People really liked her. After only a few months on her paper route, she won a trip to Yellowstone from the Journal for enrolling the most subscribers. She was the sales lady, this gal, this little gal. It was along that very newspaper route that the unimaginable would happen around 5:45 p.m. on June 29th, 1993. That evening, Jeralee was going around the neighborhood collecting the money for her newspapers from the newspaper subscribers. So she was going around the neighborhood on her route when she was abducted, sexually assaulted, murdered, dismembered, and thrown in the Snake River by a monster named James Edward Wood. Her father recalls the day it happened. He said, quote, Joyce and I were out in the garden when a lady from our LDS ward tried to call us. That's their local church. They call them wards. She then came over and asked if someone was helping Jeralee on her route because another person had seen Jeralee get in a car with somebody. The Underwoods immediately left their home on Kurtwood Place and drove to the woman's house who had seen Jeralee get in this car. It was less than a half a mile away. She told them a man had forced Jeralee into a vehicle on the corner of Carter and Main Street. Why did she not call the police when she saw a girl, an 11-year-old, being forced into a car? Instead, she calls a neighbor and says, hey, I saw this girl from our church getting thrown in a car by some rando. Come on. Deep breath. So Jeff, her dad, calls the police to report the abduction and went out to search for his daughter while Joyce waited anxiously at home. Joyce said, quote, I remember looking out the window and just waiting for her to come around the corner and say, hey, Mom, guess how many tips I got? The evening passed and the sun set without a sign of Jeralee. Fuck, I hate this.
I know.
I hate it.
It's hard. I know, I hate it too. The next day, door-to-door searches began, and that night a special meeting was held at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints building that Jeralee attended every Sunday. Her father, Jeff, said they had a steak fast for her. Steak, S-T-A-K-E, not steak that you eat. And everybody knelt in the steak center for a prayer. There was probably over 1,000 people there from all walks of life. After the prayer, Joyce said she had a feeling that her daughter was okay. She assumed that meant she would return home safe, but later learned Jeralee had already been killed by that time. She was okay. Her mom said she was with Heavenly Father, so she was in good hands. Days passed without any new information on where she could be. Police from agencies across all of East Idaho set up traffic checkpoints, and national media began covering the story. Investigators announced a break in the case. Following a tip, James Edward Wood, had been taken into custody and charged with kidnapping. Wood offered no resistance and readily admitted his guilt regarding Underwood's murder. He would tell them he kidnapped her at gunpoint and shot her with his .22 caliber revolver the following day. He would visit the body for over a week, repeatedly raping her before finally dismembering the remains and dumping them in the Snake River. He told police where they could find Jeralee's remains, and 8 days after the murder, a search crew found what was left of her. He also admitted to 2 other rapes and several robberies committed just days after he murdered Jeralee. According to the findings of the district court later, Wood returned to the site of the murder, undressed the corpse, and mutilated the body by removing the sex organs and severing the arms, head, and legs. He threw the clothing and body parts into the river. The body was later recovered with the exception of the right hand and right calf. Her father recalled, "The morticians stayed up all night trying to figure out what to do after they recovered as much as they could of her body." The Underwoods never got to see Jeralee before she was buried. Yeah, it's terrible.
And when you guys see a picture of this guy, it is like ew personified.
Mm-hmm.
There is not a single positive thing to say. Evil just emanates from him.
He looks slimy.
Slimy and just these dead eyes. The only emotion that I ever see from him is either like totally dead eyes or positively gleeful. It is.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
We're going to tell you about this fucking monster. And let me say, you can feel sorry for the kid. He had a shitty beginning of his life. But that does not negate the choices he made as an adult.
Absolutely.
Just going to put that right out there. So, James Edward Wood was born James Godwin on December 9th, 1947 in Pensacola, Florida. At the time of his birth, his father, Sherman, was an alcoholic and he was imprisoned in Leavenworth, prompting his mother, Hazel, to leave the state with her 2 boys and move to Idaho. His childhood was relatively normal until 1955, when the 8-year-old witnessed the tragic death of his mom when she perished in a fire at the potato processing plant where she worked in Rupert, Idaho. Shortly after the tragedy, he was adopted by his aunt and uncle in Idaho Falls. They changed his name to James Edward Wood. He claims that during this time he was abused both physically and mentally, which caused him to lash out frequently. And he also reported at this time, when he was around 9 years old, he started having violent sexual fantasies. Unable to control him, his aunt and uncle sent him to the Idaho Youth Training Center in St. Anthony, which is a boys' reform school, essentially. It's prison for small boys.
Yeah.
It's what it is. Training center. In 1961, 14-year-old James received counseling at the Youth Correction Center. This would be one of 3 stays that he had during his adolescence. He tried to escape this facility 8 times, but was always caught and returned. Although one time he did successfully actually manage to escape the grounds by holding a knife to a guard's throat, but they did catch him and bring him back. So he was stealing cars, he set fires to dumpsters, and eventually became a ward of the state when his aunt and uncle were like, can't do this. In 1964, he was released from reform school under the condition that he leave the state and live with his dad, Sherman, in Louisiana. He was 17 years old, and he began to work for his father's business of selling and installing chain fences. He then decided to enroll in flight school. In 1967, at 20 years old, he married his first wife, Angie Bell, and they had a child. Angie filed for divorce a few months later after learning about James's impending prison sentence. See, he had moved into his brother's house and was arrested for breaking into an apartment where he stabbed 2 women and attempted to rape one of them. He was arrested and taken to Bossier Parish Jail to await charges on aggravated battery. Now, let me just say this. He broke in to an apartment. He stabbed 2 women and slashed both of their throats. He thought he had killed them. He was charged with battery, not attempted murder, battery, and attempted rape. So, luckily, while he was there, he suffered severe burns following an incident in which he stole his cellmate's blanket. In response, the man threw a cup of burning lighter fluid on him. Good for that guy. Wood was convicted of the charges and sentenced to 10 years in prison. 10 years for essentially, he thought he had murdered these two women. He was intending on murdering these two women. Gets 10 years in the Louisiana State Penitentiary. And in a series of truly unfortunate fuck-ups, he would only spend 4 years because they let him out for good behavior. 4 years in prison. This guy who had slashed the throats of two women, but he was good in jail.
Such a good boy.
He was so well behaved, he's fixed. Set him free. In 1974, after getting out of prison, he remarried Angie and had another child. But a few months later, she filed for a final divorce.
Good move, Ange.
He then became a truck driver, traveling cross-country, committing all sorts of various crimes. During this time, he and his brother committed several robberies across Louisiana, Texas, and Arkansas. In 1977, he was arrested for robbing a pizzeria in Baton Rouge. Wood eventually moved back to the northern part of the state, took another job as a truck driver, and married a Shreveport woman, but was soon after arrested for raping someone else. He was again convicted and given a few years' imprisonment and released early for good behavior. In 1987, he married a woman named Yvonne, and they had a son. He eventually moved to Grand Cane, Louisiana, but was soon after forced to flee when a 14-year-old relative of his wife filed a complaint with police claiming that he had raped her at the photo lab where he had briefly worked. So he headed for Idaho. You'd think this guy would take a break for a bit, but no. As he passed through a suburb in St. Louis, Missouri, he kidnapped an 18-year-old girl named Jamie Massengill, drove her to a nearby forest, raped her, and shot her in the head. Miraculously, she survived. Unfortunately, he escaped and arrived in Idaho on November 1st, 1992, moving in with his cousin in Chubbuck, Idaho. Chubbuck is the weirdest name.
It's the worst.
Chubbuck.
It's the worst.
Chubbuck.
I don't love it.
I also don't love it. I don't love any of this.
No, God, I think if I were Jeralee's parents, I don't know how they coped with knowing his history. Like, it's bad enough what he does to their daughter.
Yep.
Alone. But to know how many times he could have been stopped is devastating.
Yes. The amount of shit he gets away with, and even the stuff he's caught for. Guys, he's in prison. I understand people can get in trouble in prison, but if he knows that he's barely going to have to spend any time there, if he follows the rules, of course he's going to have good behavior. There's no girls to rape in there.
When he gets caught, he's not like, no, wasn't me, prove it, wasn't me. He's like, yeah, I did it. I tried to kill people, I murdered them. Well, I just shot her and she lived, so I thought God was telling me that it wasn't her time to die, so he left. What? I mean, anyway. Woo! On July 7th, 1993, Wood was arraigned at the law firm of Whittier, McDougall, Souza, Murray, and Clark. That's a really long name for a law firm, was appointed as his public defender. On July 12th, the amended complaint was filed charging Wood with 12 felonies, including the first-degree murder and kidnapping of Jeralee and several other kidnappings, rapes, and armed robberies. Mr. Wood was delighted with all of the media attention he was receiving, so much so that on August 9th, 1993, Whittier, his own attorney, filed a motion to limit visitation, which was intended to restrict media contact with Wood because this dumbass kept making statements to the press that were detrimental to his defense. The motion was granted and an order issued providing that representatives of the media would only be allowed to phone or visit with the prior approval of his attorney. The sheriff, however, refused to honor Whittier's request to remove a telephone from Woods' cell, which he would use to call members of the press himself, despite Whittier's efforts to persuade him not to speak to the media.
This guy is like any attention is good attention.
God. In what has to be one of the most brilliant ploys to get his client to shut the hell up, Whittier drafted a 3-page contract for Woods' signature for the rights to write a book about Wood and to obtain movie rights for his story. Whittier did not sign the contract and testified that the contract was a hoax, a ruse, to get Wood to stop talking to the media, his last attempt to control an uncontrollable client. I feel bad for his attorney. Like, that doesn't happen often.
I know. And these poor people, like, they were court ordered to defend him, so they couldn't even get out of it. They weren't even getting paid.
At approximately the same time, Whittier organized a press conference at which Wood gave a televised confession to the murder of Jeralee and to the 1976 murder of 33-year-old Shirley Coleman. Coleman, an employee at the Western Electric plant in Greenwood, Louisiana, was abducted from a parking lot while doing her Christmas shopping. Her skeletal remains were found in a rural area in West Shreveport?
Shreveport, Louisiana. Yeah.
Have you been there? Are you from there? On January 7th, 1981. In his confession, Wood claimed he had driven Shirley to the General Electric industrial plant where he raped her in the back seat of her own gold and beige Oldsmobile before driving her out to the woods and shooting her in the back of the head. He was never charged with the murder of Coleman due to lack of physical evidence linking him to the crime. Wood was arraigned on August 31st, 1993 in district court and entered pleas of not guilty to all counts. Defense requested a psychiatric examination, and another hearing was scheduled for September 14th to hear additional defense motions. However, following a recess, Wood returned to court and withdrew his prior pleas of not guilty and entered guilty pleas to 1 count of first-degree murder, 1 count of first-degree kidnapping, and 2 counts of rape. The remaining charges were dismissed without prejudice. The district court accepted the guilty pleas. Wood was found guilty of the crime and was being sentenced to death. Judge Lynn Windmill called him a cold, pitiless slayer. So for some people who might not know, if something is dismissed without prejudice, it means that they can go back and charge him if they want. Later. Get more evidence, whatever. So it's not like they were just dismissed and they were like, bye-bye.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds like this was a plea deal. So if he decided that he was at some point going to appeal, then they could be like, you're breaking the plea deal, so we're going to throw all of these charges
at you.
Back at you.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to talk about what happened when he took Jeralee. Because when you plead guilty, usually part of the process after you plead guilty is you have to essentially admit in public, admit in court what you did. And it's called something, which I can't remember what it's called. Probably should have looked at it, but I didn't. But it's called something. Professional. So this will probably take a few minutes. If you don't want to hear it, you can skip right through. So during the trial, the court and the family had to hear exactly what happened that summer evening in June of 1993. 45-year-old James Wood had just moved to Pocatello and had been eating dinner with his cousin when Jeralee came to the door collecting money for the newspaper. Just minutes after she left, Wood told his cousin he was going out to buy alcohol. After leaving the home, he approached Jeralee in his car. He told her the story that his cousin had written her a bad check, that it was no good, and that if she gave him back the check, he would give her cash instead. As she was looking in her money bag, he grabbed her and pushed her into the car. Wood drove Jeralee to the Preston area and then north back to Pocatello. Now, during this time, he heard on the radio that police were setting up checkpoints, so he managed to avoid them because he heard about them on the radio. During the drive, Wood said that Jeralee asked him why he had kidnapped her. He also said she spoke about her clogging class and her Mormon faith. Wood eventually stopped along the Snake River north of Idaho Falls. So this was late at night at this point. It was then that he raped her. They spent the night in his car with Jeralee sleeping on the floor, curled up on the passenger side. In the morning, she told him she needed to use the bathroom. She got out of his vehicle and he followed her closely into some bushes, where he shot her in the back of the head. He then went back to his cousin's house, where he roused some suspicion by immediately cleaning his car, and then he hid it behind his cousin's boat in the driveway. And I watched a documentary about this, and the cousin said that he thought it was weird because James Wood was a messy fucker. But he also said, he didn't use those words, but he also said that then after he cleaned it, James hid his car behind a boat, his cousin's boat that he had parked in the driveway. And he thought that was weird. And so he went and he kind of moved the boat a little bit. And almost immediately, Wood went outside and moved the car so it stayed hidden. So he was like, that's fucking weird. He then went on a camping trip with his cousin and some friends where it was noted that he would act really strangely whenever they spoke of the murder. This, along with him deep cleaning his car the morning after the abduction, was enough for his cousin to call the police about his suspicions that James was involved with the disappearance of Jeralee. So,
I'm a bad person.
You're a bad person?
Well, I told you, you asked not to have to read anything about her. What happened to her?
That.
And
it's okay.
I managed that for the first part.
It's all right. We got through that part.
We did.
So as Wood sat on death row, the Underwoods learned some additionally alarming news because these poor people can't catch a fucking break. They learned that Wood's case was one of more than a dozen in Idaho affected by an Arizona case in which the U.S. Supreme Court decided capital defendants must be sentenced to die by a jury rather than a judge. Now, this meant that because a judge had decided that he was going to get the death penalty, that his case would now go back to trial for resentencing. So they weren't going to have to go through a trial again, obviously because he had pled guilty, but they were going to have to go through all of this again, the resentencing bit. Jeralee's dad, Jeff, said, quote, "It was too much to take in, so I said a prayer to Heavenly Father and asked if he would please just take Wood's life so it could be over and done with." 2 weeks later, on January 30th, 2004, Wood, then 56, died in prison of natural causes. Jeff then said, "It just brought total closure to me. It was done. It was over. No more." The Underwoods tried to move forward following Jeralee's death. They never spoke to Wood, and he never reached out to them. They had nothing they wanted to say to him, and both Joyce and Jeff began attending professional counseling sessions. There was one session that was especially therapeutic for me, remembers Jeff. We made a scarecrow replica of James Wood to get my anger out. Then I actually did exactly what he did to Jeralee. I went through the whole process, and it was really helpful to get rid of the anger and not continue to harbor it. Ugh. Law enforcement believes Wood could be responsible for over 30 murders and 85 rapes. And just to add another layer to this guy's disgustingness, when he went back into court and changed his plea from not guilty to guilty, he said he did it for her parents. Bullshit. You did it for her parents. Mm-hmm. You weren't thinking about her parents. You don't think about anybody but yourself. To do that to their child and then to insult everybody's intelligence by saying that you did it to make sure that they didn't have to go through the trial, and then you stood up and told the whole world what you did to their baby?
Yeah.
Fuck you, man.
Totally fuck you.
God. I hate him.
I hate him too, and it's just, it makes me, we've said it before and I'll say it again, there's just something our judicial system is broken. I think that drugs are bad, and I think that people should go to prison for doing illegal things. It's illegal, it's illegal, it's illegal. But I feel like there's people in prison and jail for marijuana for way longer than people are in jail for molesting children and raping people. And it's just maddening, because the thing is that I do not believe that rapists and child molesters can be rehabilitated. No, and so, and this just proves it. Not that there was no rehabilitation, I guess, in there, but even the worry of getting caught for him it didn't matter. Wasn't enough to make him stop.
No, he was broken. There was no fixing this guy. And I think what's so frustrating about like the 3-strike laws in California, they've got like 1 million people in jail for drug offenses that have the 3-strike laws. And what kills me is, and I understand the reasoning behind it sort of, but I think it's focused on the wrong group of people. See, drug dealers can be rehabilitated.
Exactly.
To not be drug dealers.
Exactly.
Sexual predators and sociopaths, serial criminals, cannot be rehabilitated. So if someone continuously destroys other people, then acts like a good boy when they're locked up, that shouldn't mean anything.
Exactly.
I don't care if you behave yourself in prison. You should be locked up for fucking ever if you try to rape someone. I don't even care.
And slit their throats.
Yep.
Yeah. Nope.
He should have been in prison for life for the very first time that he did it to someone. And that is what is so infuriating about this whole thing.
It could have been prevented.
It is absolutely preventable. The 14-year-old he raped, the 18-year-old girl that he brought out into the woods. He did the exact same thing to that 18-year-old girl that he did to Jeralee, and he got away with it.
And this is just a couple of the stories about him. Yes. I mean, there's so much more. It was hard to pick through. Yeah.
No, I mean, if somebody is just a lifetime criminal, it's so hard
That's
to
such a disgusting one. It wasn't like it wasn't just robberies. It was rapes and attempted murders and possible murders. Like, they were all so bad.
Well, and the fact that at 9 years old, he was having these like violent sexual fantasies, that's not
right. That's a mental,
there's a big, there's always that sort of nature versus nurture argument. And for me, it's usually like, I think it's 80% nurture. But I think that there are just some people who are born with their fucking wires crossed in their head. Yeah. And it does not matter what kind of environment they are brought up in. It doesn't matter. Like, they're going to be monsters.
Rape, murder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You see it all the time with people who have these great upstanding parents. Mm-hmm. And even they'll tell you that they were good parents and that they had a good childhood, and they're just fucked up.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is. It's so powerful, interesting to me that Jeff, her dad, prays to God to just end this, and 2 weeks later he's dead.
I know. The universe works in mysterious ways. Because it's not like he was old and dying. He was 56, And he dies of natural causes at 56. Yeah. It was probably all the evil fucking rotting his body from the inside.
Hopefully God was just watching the judicial system and saying, what in the actual fuck, guys? Gotta go.
He probably was. He was like, you know what? You guys are clearly not going to get your act together.
I'm going to take care of this.
I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of him now. Ugh, that poor family. But you know what? It is the smallest blessing. Right.
And I think
he was just gone. and that they didn't have to go through him being executed by the state. It was just done. The trauma was not going to be added on by the anxiety of having to wait for him to be put to death. And then all of like the shit that comes with that.
Yeah, the mental anguish of it all. Yeah. Well, and I think, the other thing too, that as much as we hated to tell this story and talk about it and have it go through our minds and become a part of our lives.
Yeah.
But it's so important to remember that it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you live in small town Idaho or LA or New York City or Florida. You send your kid out into the day light hours to go collect money door to door where they're not even going in somebody's house, and these things can happen. So I think it's just a good reminder that we got to stay vigilant. You can't become complacent. It's scary.
Guys, I have to tell you, Camden, when her son was little, sicked an undercover cop on him to see if he would get in the guy's car. It was like my most proudest moment of you as a mom. It's when she worked for the sheriff's department, and she was like, I'm going to see if my kid is going to get in a rando car.
What did he do,
didn't,
Whitney?
Right?
No.
Did he go in?
No. But then it was probably the same cop that was like, comes in a couple weeks later, is like, Camden, I just want to let you know I was doing the school patrol, because our officers always patrol the schools during pickup and drop off and, before and after school. And he's like, Ashton was like literally running out of the street in front of my rig. Pretty much almost hit him. So you might want to talk to him about putting the brakes on. Ashton, I love you. I know you listen to this because you're my favorite, but it happened. It's a true story.
When we were in grade school, I was walking home with this other girl that was in our class.
Are you talking about
home? Do you remember this?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. And I think, God, we were in like the 4th or 5th grade.
Yeah, we were little.
And this guy, we noticed that every block that we went, this car would pull around and like stop in front of us. And we were in the north end of Boise. So you're just in this like very old historical residential area. And so these blocks are big, but you're in you're not like downtown. This is a neighborhood. And so you're walking in every block, this car would circle. And then we noticed that his windows were down and that his dick was out.
No thanks.
And he wanted us to see it.
Ew.
And so we ran to my house and told my mom, and the police came to our grade school the next day.
I remember
and we
that.
were pulled into the principal's office to look at mug shots. And it was the first penis I'd ever seen,
Oh, traumatizing.
Yeah. It was not a good time had by all. It was very weird. And
Did
of course
they catch him?
we weren't. No.
No, I didn't.
No,
think
we
so.
didn't. I mean, we told him what the car looked like, but really, I mean, we were just so stunned that he didn't have any pants on. He was like Winnie the Poohing it, We just had a shirt on.
Donald Ducking it. Sir, no one wants to see that.
No,
Get out of here.
especially to like 10-year-old girls.
Sick.
He shrieked and ran.
Disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
so anyway,
on a lighter note.
Oh yeah, can we go lighter?
Yeah, let's go way lighter. To an R.O. Idaho.
Oh, good. I haven't read this. So
Well, this is like, it accidentally cut and pasted my whole entire article, so I had to, so don't read it, because these are saved for later. But, so the launch of the parcel post in 1913 was a welcome service, especially for rural Americans, and the growth of the service was phenomenal in its first few years. I mean, did you ever watch, what was it, The Postman with Kevin Costner? I'm just saying. It's very important.
I did not watch that.
Ooh.
Wasn't that a scary movie?
Oh, it was about the United States Postal Service. Not everything. 98% of what I watch is scary, but not all.
Okay.
All right. So during the first 6 months of operation, approximately 300 million parcels were mailed, and as time went on, weight limits continued to increase. So one of the oddest postal packages ever sent was mailed from Grangeville, Idaho to Lewiston, Idaho.
Yeah.
So it's a little over an hour's drive. On February 19th, 1914, this happened. The 48.5-pound package was just shy of the recently instated 50-pound limit. But strangely enough, the package also had a name. May Pierstorff, a 6-year-old girl.
For fuck's sake.
May's parents wanted to send their daughter to visit her Lewiston grandparents, but were hesitant to pay the high train fare. Since there were no provisions in the parcel post regulations specifically prohibiting the sending of a person, they decided to mail their daughter. And no, May was not boxed up or bubble wrapped for the journey. The postage total was a paltry 53 cents in stamps, which were then attached to May's coat. She traveled the entire distance to Lewiston in the train's mail car and was delivered to her grandmother's home by the mail clerk on duty. Of course, as a result, regulations against mailing people were added to the fine print, which is a shame given today's gas and airline prices.
That's ingenious.
I know,
Can you imagine
right?
just like putting some stamps on your kid and being like, wait outside for the postman.
Here, government agency, please take my child to their grandparents' front door. Thank you.
Do you know that my parents, when I was 10, I might have been 11, they sent me back east by myself on an airplane all the way to Massachusetts. But I was by myself.
Did
I
they
went
do
through
the
Chicago
whole,
O'Hare by myself. No, nobody
no wonder you
accompanied
even got
me.
out of there.
I had no flight attendant.
My parents did that too. We flew back to New Jersey, New York. But I was 16. My sister was 14 though. But I feel like,
yeah.
I mean, I had traveled with my parents before, but it was.
No, we traveled a lot, and I had been in Chicago O'Hare a lot, and so I knew like how to change. But I had to go to different terminals. Like I had to change terminals. I remember.
Yeah, that is wild. Could you imagine sending Tucker?
I wouldn't send Tucker when he was 18 years old on a plane by himself. Okay, this child. He would forget what he was doing entirely.
Mom, I'm in the air.
No, he'd just be like, where am I going? What am I doing? Am I here?
Oh my God,
connecting
so
flight?
funny.
Forget it.
Forget it.
He is a very smart kid school-wise, but no, I would never send him on an airplane alone.
But even if he was like, wouldn't forget what he was doing at the second
I thought
stop,
about sending him to Portland to like visit my cousin and her boys because they all love each other so much and it's only a 40-minute flight or whatever. I would probably do that.
But there's no stopping though. Like
No,
you would see him
it's
off.
a 40-minute direct flight and Aaron would be there to get him.
It's nonstop. It's fine, Tucker. You're good when you listen to this when you're 18. You're so smart. And pretty.
He is smart and pretty. And the sweetest boy that ever was. I'm not supposed to say that because it's not cool, but he is.
Well, anyway, so that was the terrible, terrible story of sweet, sweet Jeralee.
Mm-hmm.
And the dumb shit whose name I don't want to say anymore.
Yeah.
I hoped that if you didn't enjoy hanging out with us, I hope you got something from hanging out with us.
Yeah. And real quick, guys, our next episode is going to be like the official. We've released a couple things, but that weren't official episodes, but it's going to be our official 20th episode release after this.
What?
We should figure out what case we're doing.
We should.
Case for 20th. Yeah. So if you guys have any requests, throw them up on our page. Something that you really want to hear.
The other thing I would love to hear too is some really good ghost stories.
Yeah, guys, we would love to do some spooky ghosties, and we just, without us being able to go to travel places to like experience it and tell you guys about it, it's difficult to make a whole episode. And so you guys have stories. We would love to hear them.
Because we will be traveling to do some once the roads get better. We live in terrible Idaho roads, and we don't need to be dangerous. But we do have some things planned.
Yes.
But
we do have some things planned. And I'm going to get my pants scared off.
You're going to be, I'm going to be scared, but I'm already like into ghosty stuff. And
yeah.
My sister wants to go with us to Gooding.
Oh, totally. She can be our photographic paranormal teammate. She can capture our terror.
The spirits and our terror. It's going to be amazing.
And I really, really, really want to see if we can do an overnight at the state pen. At the old one.
Erin Anderson, talking to you.
Yes, we do have an inn there, don't we?
We do. And I feel like we could have this. What if we had, oh my God. What if you guys stay tuned for Slumber Party 2023 State Pen Edition.
Oh my God, so scary.
I'll bring grandson Daryl, the snail.
I don't think Daryl enjoys the spooky scary. Although he has a house he can just squish right into. Daryl's got it made with that built-in
That's what I'm
house.
saying. I'm studying him.
You're such a creep.
I know.
All right. Well, we want to thank our new patrons, Marissa Smith and Rebecca Madrigal. Guys, thank you.
Thank you
for
a million times.
subscribing. We're so excited to have you. And can't wait for you guys to hear all of the bonus content that you get now. I hope you like it. So if you would like to become a patron, you can become a subscriber by hitting the link in the show notes that says support the show. It takes you right to Patreon, and you can see all of the bonus content that you get if you become a monthly subscriber to the show. And if you are interested in sponsoring the show, you can email us at ghostsandgarnets@gmail.com. Thank you guys so very much for listening. We appreciate it, and have a fantastic week. And next week will be a bummer because that's just what we do, but not this big of a bummer, I think. We don't know yet, though.
You're going to be bummed, though, because you're going to be back from Adele. Wah, wah. Back in real life.
When you guys hear this, I will have already been to Adele. I'm going in 2 days. And you guys will hear this after. But I'm very excited. I'll probably post pictures.
I was going to just sing an Adele song, but I can't think of one right now off the top of my head. What? Well, I'm just having it's right there, but I can't sing it to you guys, which is probably a blessing. Also a curse. All right.
All right.
Love you guys.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.